requirement. Thank you.
Okay. So let's start with refuge and a motivation, positive motivation. So in our gallery view, so I can see you all. Okay, so let's focus our attention for a few moments on our breath or another object. And then visualize all of the other people you have to deal with, all seated around you. Beginning with your family, your mother and father. Father to your father of this life, immediately to your right, and then all your male family and friends to your right and behind you. And your mother of this life immediately on your left. Your female family and friends to your left, behind you. And then those whom you're most prone to become angry with, imagine seated directly in front of you, seated facing towards you. And then all the other sentient beings, human beings, animals, and others. Imagine seated all around you, vast space. And remember your interconnectedness with all of them. And then generate a positive motivation for this session. Why are you here? What do you want to accomplish in the short term and the long term? How can that benefit the world at large? And if you like, you can now generate the mind of refuge. Visualize the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha in the space in front of you. And generate faith and the mind going for refuge to Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. Okay. So that's a very short beginning. Okay, so dealing with people. Why don't we, okay, so there's a few points I want to make, and then there's a few verses I thought we could go through if we have time. So why don't we start with the visualization we're just doing. This is very common, especially when we're doing the 4 immeasurable thoughts. Meditation on the 4 measurable thoughts, or the 4 measurables, sometimes called. We visualize all sentient beings seated around us. So like I just described very briefly, visualize our parents of this life on either side of us, beginning with our mother or father to our immediate. So visualize our mother to immediate left, and then all the grandmothers and aunts and female, sisters, our wife, or daughter, or female cousins and friends to our left and behind us. And then to our right, our father of this life, and then all the male family and friends. And then enemies or people we're most prone to become angry with or mistreat. We visualize directly in front of us, seated, facing towards us, to remember us, to remind us to make special effort in generating positive attitudes toward them and practicing patience. And then we visualize all sentient beings seated around. So this is a very common visualization. But there's a few things that, related to the visualization, arising from that relate to the main points I want to make. So one is, usually when we do that visualization, we say, your father of this life, your mother of this life. Right. So first of all, in the Buddhist perspective, we have countless past lives, countless future lives. So that perspective changes everything when we talk about dealing with people. Because usually in an ordinary, perspective, at least in Western culture, then when we think about dealing with people, we just think about it in terms of this life. We're dealing with these people in this life, and once this life is over, then we don't have to deal with them anymore. But in the Buddhist perspective, that's not true. You always have to deal with everyone. There's no end. You never escape. So you better treat them well now, because that's the only way out. Um, so yeah, so because there's, think about, the people who are our parents in this life, our mother and father, we really do have to, I mean, whether we like things they do or not, they're our mother and they're our father, right? So we're going to, interact with them again and again. If we don't, if we totally cut off, this is one of the most terrible kind of things can happen to a person, to a parent. They're, for whatever reason, if they have a huge falling out with their children and they don't speak to each other, it's it's a very painful, kind of tragic thing. It's a huge tear in the fabric of the family and the fabric of the heart. A very painful thing in one's emotional life to be, cut off by choice. Whether it's one's own choice or the choice of one's children, and the same for the children, to be, yeah, cut off from the. So we feel very much like, for better or for worse, we're connected to these people, our parents, their children, for this entire life. But in this visualization, so we say that, the parents of this life. So the reason we say that is because, well, they weren't our parents in our past life. We had a past life. And that life, they weren't our parents, they were somebody else. And in our future life, they probably won't be our parents, they'll probably be someone else. But but every sentient being has been our parents, and will be, as long as we take rebirth. Samsara will always have parents in most rebirths. And so we'll be connected with other sentient beings. So not only because there's infinite past lives, infinite future lives, life doesn't end. It doesn't begin at conception. It doesn't end at death. At least this life. I mean, this life does, but as far as being a person, and as far as being related to other people, other sentient beings, then that goes on forever. So we're never, yeah. So even that we have an enemy, we have a difficult time getting along with someone in this life. It's true, when they die, we don't have to deal with them anymore in that form, but we meet them again in future lives, and vice versa. So and then, yeah, so then I guess there's two main points I'm kind of stumbling around here. One is that yeah, we always meet all sentient beings again and again. We're always aware of, even if we're enlightened, it's not that we totally, so we experience pure happiness, but we're kind of intimately aware of the suffering of all sentient beings. So until all sentient beings are free from suffering, we can never be at peace, kind of be at ease. I mean, in one way, we can be totally at peace, like when we can achieve nirvana, we can achieve enlightenment. Our mind doesn't experience, um, you know, perturbation, being disturbed. But we're aware, as long as we're aware of the suffering of others, and there's something we can do about it, then there's a sense of, obligation to do something about it. So it's not like our work is ever really over until every sentient being is free from suffering. So in that way, we're always together with everyone, forever. So that when we deal with other people, that can change a lot the way we think about how we relate to that. Yeah, that it should bring us a sense of more kind of responsibility. Like, well, whatever difficulty I'm facing in my relationship with this person, I have to work on it, right? It won't just go away ever. Now, that's not to say like we have to try to be friends with everyone all the time. There are, some people that they, for example, they might have a really bad influence on us. They're a really bad influence to us. Like, I don't know, for whatever, there's different ways people can be a bad influence on us, but and such that we just can't handle it when we're in the, around that person. It totally overwhelms us, and we maybe, like say we're addicted to drugs and alcohol, and there's certain people that just encourage us to use drugs and alcohol, and we just can't resist when we're around those people. Well, it's better to avoid being around those people, obviously, right? And then the same with, more minor things like just, wasting time chatting about just ridiculous things, or complaining. Like there might be one person in our family who's always complaining about, and then there's another person in our family who we really don't like, and we really do tend to think negative things about them. But when we're on our own, we can kind of manage it, keep a positive outlook. But when we're with this other person who also really hates that person, and they just complain all the time, unabashedly, then we just fall into it too. Then it's better to avoid that, right? So there's all kinds of circumstances where, a particular person or a particular person's behavior that can have a really bad influence on us, and it's just wise to recognize that and avoid that. And then there might, there might be other people who just really can't stand us, and whenever we're around them, it just drives them crazy. Well, as a service to them, it's maybe better just to avoid them, right? So it's not the case that because we're in samsara and beyond, we're going to be together with everyone all the time. That means we have to accept or want or be around everyone all the time. We have to choose like what what are how we spend our time and with whom. What makes the best use of our time. That's fine. And then so the one point is we're going to be around all sentient beings forever. The second point is, well, I guess so it means, yeah. Well, maybe I should go on to some other points. I'm not sure what the second point is right there. Another one is, though, that all sentient beings have the potential for enlightenment. It's maybe the second main point. Every sentient being, every person, every animal, every creature has the potential to become fully enlightened. So this is a different than in the Pali tradition. In the Sanskrit Buddhist tradition, this is accepted, right? So so that should also change when we're dealing with other people. Change a lot their perspective, like to recognize that this person has the potential to be perfect, infinitely good, to have no, to completely abandon every afflictive emotion and every type of harmful behavior. So it means we have to never give up on people, on anyone, right? No matter what they do, no matter how badly they act, we can never completely give up on them, right? And again, it doesn't mean we have to just, what do you say, tolerate every kind of behavior, or let everything slide, or think that there shouldn't be any kind of consequences or punishment or something like that. It just means that we always, like if people do go out and mass murderers or something, they do need to be incarcerated, right, to protect themselves, to protect other people. For example, or if someone does lie again and again and again, we shouldn't trust them next time they tell us something, right? That would be foolish. But it means, like, no matter how much someone lies or murders or whatever, we never give up hope that they can become a better person. Maybe not in that life, but there's next life and next life and next life. So we always, in our own heart, in the way we look at that person, we always hold out hope and the intention that we can do whatever we can, or whatever happens, that they can, gradually they can, just like us, they can overcome their afflictive emotions and develop all their wisdom, compassion, all their positive qualities, and become fully enlightened. Yeah, so that should those two things, then, that we're always together with all sentient beings, and that all sentient beings have the potential for full enlightenment, just like we do, should change a lot the way we relate to other people. And then another thing is that we have to be, well, sometimes we think of our Buddhist practice as like just something I do by myself in my quiet, comfortable, safe space. Like I study and read books, and I sit in my room and I meditate and I listen. I watch nice videos and I feel good in my room. But then when I go out to deal with other people, that's all worldly stuff, and that's a distraction from my real practice. And I just have to finish with that as soon as I can and go back to my room and be happy, right? But that's a total mistake, right? The real practice is dealing with other people, right? That's when it's kind of like Geshe Tashi Tsering, who's the current abbot of Saramay. He was a longtime teacher in Jamyang Center in London. He put it very well, I think, when he said, like, you do your morning meditation. That's actually practice for the real practice of dealing with other people, right? That's your preparation for the real practice of going out in the world and dealing with people. So dealing with other people is the real practice of Dharma, in a way. I mean, for these two reasons, that eventually we have to lead all sentient beings to enlightenment, and we're together with all sentient beings forever, right? So our real practice, so if we see that as like, yeah, my real practice is how I deal with, this person, and how I deal with that person, and how I deal with that person. And when we sit down in our room and, we study and we meditate in our room, actually we should bring all of those difficult, relationships we've had, all those difficulties we have with all those other people, that's our main material, right, to work on in our meditation. That's what we need to think about, and and see our own mistakes, see where we make mistakes from, in our body, with our body, speech, and mind in relation to other sentient beings, and then, imagine how we're going to do better the next time we meet that person, how we're going to think about differently, how we're going to be more, tolerant, more forgiving, try to be more understanding, try to deal more skillfully with the person, so that we don't get upset, when we can, have a positive outlook on the relationship, and we can maybe benefit them in a way that, we didn't know how to in the past. We couldn't figure that out. So we should really try to see other people as like opportunities for us to practice. And we need to be really forgiving with ourselves and just recognize we're going to mess up the way we deal with other people, like again and again and again. And we just have to try again and again and again to do better next time. Then and just be realistic. Like, yeah, dealing with other people is one of the most difficult things, probably the most difficult thing we do in life. I mean, it's just not easy for anyone. I mean, as a kind of a monk who's, gives Dharma talks and tries to answer questions, I get a lot of questions. The hardest, I guess, many of the hardest questions I get are not about like, details of philosophical things. Those are easy, right? It's like my mother does this. My aunt has a this kind of big disagreement with my cousin, and that they can't get along. How do I deal with that? At work, there's this person that treats me like this. How do I deal with that? Those are the most difficult things. How to apply, these broad kind of, what do you say, principles and descriptions, about different kinds of afflictive emotions and positive emotions, and different kinds of practice, but how to take all these, kind of general advice in Buddhist teachings and apply it to a specific situation of how to deal with this person. It's really difficult to do, so that's what I think, that's kind of our main work as aspiring Buddhist practitioners, is to try to do that again and again and again. And it's never, just recognize it's never easy. But we have to try again and again, and recognize that we're gonna mess up, make mistakes, and then We just have to come back to our teacher's advice and the texts that we inspire us and our own meditation practice, and then think about what's happened, what what went wrong, what did how can I do better, and then try. Yeah, and then just a couple other things before I switch to the PowerPoint and the quotes is I'll recognize that just like, well, why do we mess up again and again? Because we're so habituated to attachment, anger, and selfishness, acting out of our egoistic pride and selfishness. So that's yeah, and those things, those habitual ways of relating, we have very strong habitual ways of relating to other people, basically. And that's why it's so difficult, because those habits are so old. And so in most past lives, we never challenge those habits. We just act, we just follow afflictive emotions. This life, we have a human rebirth, we have intelligence, we've met a spiritual path that kind of teaches us we need to stop those destructive habits, and we're trying, but we haven't done it before, right? So much. So yeah. So yeah, just like we're really driven by afflictive emotions, even though we have some kind of awareness of them. Other people are also driven by afflictive emotions, and mostly they don't really have the tools to deal with them. So we have to be forgiving, right? Patient. Yeah, I think that's the main thing. So let's look at, I want to share my screen now. And I need to be enabled. And then
I've made you the co-host, Venerable. Now you can share it.
okay, great. Okay, so there's a few verses commonly advised. This one by Lama Zopa Rinpoche. So this is by Langri Tempa from the 8 Verses of Mind Training. Determined to obtain the greatest possible benefit up to enlightenment. So it means every form of happiness and enlightenment from all sentient beings who are more precious than a wish-fulfilling jewel. I shall hold them most dear at all time. Yeah, so one way dealing with people is to hold them dear. Hold everyone dear, friends and enemies and strangers. Why? Because they're the source of all of our happiness. How? So every happiness, everything we've ever enjoyed. So think about this in your free time. Everything you've ever enjoyed in the past, all it's come about in dependence upon a sentient being, other sentient beings. So think about just this life. Well, everything we do in this life depends upon having a human body, and that human body has come from our mother and father, for example, and our grandparents, and on back. Then, language. So many, basically everything we enjoy depends upon knowing a language. For example, that's all come from, we didn't just make up the language we speak, it comes from countless other human beings. Then food and water, right? Just basics, is simple stuff, right? All comes from other people. How much of the food that you eat did you grow? How much of the water you drink did you go to the spring and dip it out of the spring? Very, very little, I'm guessing. So it means it all comes about dependence on other people. So think about it, just worldly, temporal things, everything, that we enjoy and makes possible, every form of happiness we have, all comes about through countless other sentient beings. Therefore, we should cherish them, hold them dear, all those other sentient beings. And then in the future, think about you might think, well, the Dharma, my greatest joy comes from, meditation. That I just do alone. Well, where did you learn to meditate? People taught you, teach us. And anyway, where did meditation come from? We didn't just make it up. Like, say the Buddha or, other sages and saints in other traditions, they, they learned from other people, and then they taught to other people, and then it's been passed down through generations to us. So basically, and then also enlightenment. Eventually we might think, well, eventually I'll become enlightened, and that's just something I will do. but enlightenment comes up in dependence upon having infinite compassion for all sentient beings. So again, without sentient beings, we can't generate great compassion. Then we can't become enlightened, right? So the Shakyamuni Buddha's enlightenment came about independence upon every sentient being, because he had, in order to become enlightened, he had to generate compassion for each and every sentient being. So you can't point to one sentient being and say the Buddha became enlightened, but not independence upon that sentient being. Every sentient being that exists is a cause for the Buddha's enlightenment. Buddha became enlightened, and then and on and on and on and on. So if we don't cherish one sentient being, then we can never become enlightened, right? So our enlightenment depends upon each and every sentient being. So determined to obtain the greatest possible benefit from sentient beings, who are more precious than a wish-fulfilling jewel. So wish-fulfilling jewel can give us every form of wealth and prosperity, and every possession in the world, but cannot give us enlightenment. Sentient beings can give us enlightenment. Right? I shall hold them most dear at all times. How do they give us enlightenment? By just being there, by being objects in relation to which we can practice generosity, we can practice pure morality, we can practice patience, we can practice joyous effort. If they weren't there, we couldn't do all that. We couldn't become enlightened. Okay, next. So this is by Nagarjuna from the Precious Garden. How should we think of ourselves in relation to others, dealing with others? Like the earth, like water, fire, and wind, like medicines and firewood of the monastery. May I always be enjoyed by all sentient beings as they like, without resistance. So instead of thinking, when we deal with other sentient beings, instead of thinking, well, what can I get from them, right? We should think, what can I give to them? Instead of thinking, how can I enjoy, how can they give me some kind of enjoyment? We should think, how can I be something that is useful for them, right? So that's the analogies Nagarjuna gives, is we should think, how can I be like the earth? So think how the earth is it's just like, oftentimes, I get this question too in classes and in courses, is if I practice compassion towards all sentient beings, won't they just use me like a doormat? so Nagarjuna is saying, yes, and that would be the best possible thing that could happen, right? So think like the earth. Like the earth, we walk on it all day long. We just walk here, walk there, we ride bicycles, drive cars, build roads, build buildings, plant things. We plow it up and plant things in it, and then take those things away, and then plant more seeds, and then take those things away. And we never thank the earth, right? but the earth does it. The earth say, like, stop doing this to me. I'm so sick and tired of it. Just go away, all you human beings. No, earth is just happy to be there day after day after day for us to use, as is what's next? Water never complains that we pollute it and just I don't know, waste it. The fire, the wind, we enjoy those things again and again in all different ways to make our lives comfortable, and they just keep giving. It's like The Giving Tree is one of my favorite books by Shel Silverstein. Just keep giving. So like that, may I always be enjoyed by all sentient beings as they like, without resistance. So this is totally opposite to the way we usually think, and therefore it's Dharma, right? I don't know if this was it the last session or the session before, or was it a different course? I'm not sure, but there's this one Drum Dempa, he's one Tibetan sage, and the way he quantifies something as Dharma as if it's opposite to the way worldly people think. It's Dharma. So this is totally opposite. Okay, there's that one. Then next one. And how about cherishing sentient beings? May sentient beings be dear to me like my life or more. May they be even more dear to me than I am to myself. May all their ill deeds ripen upon me, and all my virtues ripen upon them. So this is the main scriptural source for the Tonglen practice. So the reasoning here is like this. Why do we suffer in samsara as an individual person? because we've been following our selfish, self-cherishing mind. Our self-cherishing is problematic, but selfish mind, our self-centered mind. We've been following that from beginningless time, and that's why we're still in samsara, and that's why we suffer. That's why we have attachment and anger and jealousy and arrogant pride and depression and sickness and birth and death. And all the problems we have is because we've been thinking more about ourselves than about others. So if we want to have the everlasting happiness of full enlightenment and lead all sentient beings to freedom from the oceans of samsaric suffering, we have to cherish others more than ourselves. Right? So that's why Nagarjuna says, may all sentient beings be dear to me like my life. May they be even more dear to me than myself. So we have to cherish others more than ourselves. May other sentient beings, their welfare, may we have more concern for others than ourselves. And may all their ill deeds, all their negative karma ripen upon me, and all of my virtues, all of my merit and so forth ripen upon them. Yeah. So when the ill deeds of others ripen upon us, we mean not that we suffer like and are tortured kind of infinitely, but may all of their negative karma ripen upon my self-cherishing mind and totally destroy it. May it become like a weapon destroying my self-cherishing mind, and then may all my enjoyment may it be enjoyed by others. Does that mean that we're bereft of enjoyment? No, it's like a cornucopia. There's just more enjoyment. So actually doesn't lead to our, so this attitude doesn't lead to our misery, it leads to our happiness, infinite happiness. And then finally, it's kind of a dedication, but when we're dealing with other people, it's very helpful to think like this. Whenever any sentient being encounters me, may it never be meaningless for them and always be meaningful. So this is just a very simple way to think. Whenever anybody encounters me, may it be meaningful for them, right? So then even if people, mistreat us, cheat us, deceive us, malign us, whatever, we can feel like something meaningful has happened because they encountered me and I have this intention. Then whenever someone has an angry or devotional thought arise towards me, just by looking at me, may that attitude alone be a cause that always accomplishes all the temporary and ultimate purposes of that being. So again, we have this attitude, but by people, having any sort of contact with me whatsoever, whether they think of me or see me or hear me or touch me, may that become the cause for all of their temporary and ultimate well-being and happiness. And then finally, the last verse at the bottom. Whenever others criticize me with their speech or harm me with their bodies, or likewise insult me behind my back, may all of them have the fortune to achieve enlightenment. So in short, whatever contact people have with me, may that all be beneficial for them. So that's a very helpful way to think when we deal with other people. So now your difficult questions, please. Your most difficult questions. This is the last session, so there's the last chance.
Venerable, I mean, so I read the Bodhicharyavatara, and this part always makes me cry. Like the goal is there, and I'm just way down there, like looking at the fights and the annoyances I have daily with people. It's just, especially in my office, it's like, dude, I need to stop reading Bodhicharyavatara. I'm an
Stop reading. You need to read more. Yeah, it's but we do what we can. We have to take baby steps. Right? Just reading it puts imprints, and then having the aspiration just to be a little bit better is already an amazing start, right? And then we have to make prayers, accumulate merit, and just try again. I think I was talking with a friend recently. I think something that's really helpful is just You know, like you can see with people that we have difficulty with, sometimes, you know, if we're just around the same person day after day after day, again and again and again, we really get stuck. We really get stuck in certain ways of thinking about them and relating to them. It can help a lot just to change scenery, you know, to not, you know, you look at the Buddha's life. I mean, the Buddha said, you know, the home is like a pit of fire, a pit of vipers. He said the home life is like a pit of vipers. So he recognized, I mean, he advised, you know, his monks and nuns not to live at home with their families, but to leave and go live with other like-minded practitioners in a, you know, monastery, nunnery, so forth. And then even, you know, think about the Buddha's time. Look at the Shakyamuni Buddha. He would never stay in one place for very long. He'd travel, you know, around different places continually. Partly because he's you know, he's a teacher. His responsibility is to go around and teach people. But I think he seemed to kind of encourage that among many of his, you know, disciples also, not to stay in one place for too long. Whereas I think now, I know when I look at like the monastery I'm in, and you know, many people, I don't know, you get to just stay in one place for a long time. I think we tend to get stuck in ruts. So that can, one thing that can be helpful, I think.
Even Shanti Deva, whatever little know we know about his life, he also kept moving. Like he'll have one argument and he'll leave that monastery forever. Right? And
Well, yeah, he did that. He left Nalanda Monastery. I mean, they kicked him out.
yeah.
They would have had him. I mean, they would have kept him after they saw him like float up in the air and give this amazing teaching. Like I'm sure they would have let him stay. But I think he'd kind of had it with them. I don't think we want to think he wasn't like just totally angry and just left in anger, but more like, you know, he saw that maybe it's not so useful for him to be there anymore. It's more useful for him, you know, he can serve a better purpose in another place. So he went. Also, I'm reading a bit about the life of Tsongkhapa these days, but he also, you know, he would travel around almost every season of the year, you know, summer, autumn, winter, spring. He'd be in a different place every time. Of course, it's not just because he didn't, you know, ideally when we go to another place, it's not out of aversion to the place we're leaving, but out of a sense of there's something perhaps we can accomplish in the place we're going, right? You know, we don't want to like, you know, get fed up with people at one place and then leave and then go there and then get fed up with those people and leave. That's not a good way, you know, to go about things. But we can recognize that, you know, a different environment, different set of people, different set of circumstances presents us with new challenges, right? And new opportunities that can help us grow so that when we come back, you know, to the former, you know, set of people and we meet them again, we come around again, hopefully we have something more to offer, some more tools to improve the way we relate to them. Other questions? Marianne, you have a question? Or Bharat? Bharat, you haven't asked one question the whole time.
Since Venerable, no one is asking, could I ask one?
Sure.
Yeah. Unless Vishal Tomar, you want to ask a question because you just switched on your video.
Yeah, sure. Hi, Aman. Hi, Venerable.
Uh,
Recently, especially the last 10, 12 days of the last year, I was struggling with some attachment to some person. And I've been trying to do some emptiness meditation on the same person as well as on myself, right? But this attachment seems to be a little too strong for me. Is there any other meditation that I can do in order to, work with this attachment?
sure. Yeah. Great question. Yeah, I mean, emptiness is the ultimate antidote and ultimate most powerful, but it's really difficult to use because it's, you know, understanding emptiness is a little complex. And yeah, so there are other antidotes are like this. One is to think about, you know, former instances when we've been attached to something whether it be food or relationship or another person, and then check, was it ultimately satisfying or not? Like in relationships, especially with people, most of us, we can see that friendships we've had in the past where we really put a lot of expectation on that friendship, and that would be kind of lifelong, the rest of my life I'm going to be friends with this person, but it wasn't. It ended. Sometimes gently, and sometimes not so gently. Or romantic relationships especially, most of us, we've had the experience of thinking, oh, I'm so in love with this person, it's and we feel like it's going to last forever, and then it doesn't, right? So having had that experience in the past, then in the present, when we have that feeling again, we need to use that to do a reality check, to be like, well, yeah, okay, I feel like this, but we have to distinguish between our kind of passions and our wisdom, right? We have to use our wisdom to check our passion. Our passion tells us, gives us this one view of a person and of what the future is going to be like. But then we have to use our wisdom to look at the past, to be like, well, is that how it really played out in the past, and see, and we can look at our own past, and we can also look at the situations of friends and family members who've been in a similar situation, or just in novels, stories, whatever. I mean, the evidence is all there, that usually the way attachment tells us things is going to happen is not reality, right? And then another thing about attachment is it which can help. So the more we know about attachment, the more ways we can find, the more kinds of antidotes we can find. So another way attachment works is it's telling us kind of that the pleasure will come from the object of my attachment. So if you're attached to a certain person, that the way attachment gives a person is, if I can be with that person, that will bring satisfaction to me. That will be pleasure to me. But is that really a fair burden to put on another person? That they're responsible for kind of my well-being and my happiness? I mean, it's not really fair to the other person to make them the responsibility, of my, we're responsible for our own happiness, right? And we need to find a source of, and so, well, this is another good antidote, is to think about how attachment not only is making us put an unrealistic expectation and an unfair burden on another person to be a source of my happiness, but also attachment is telling us that we don't have a source of happiness within us. It generates a kind of impoverished view of ourselves, that we can't be happy without this other thing, without this job or this money or this other person, that I can't be happy without that, which is it's a very negative view of ourselves, right? It's not as negative as just kind of, well, it's a kind of very subtle sort of lower form of low self-esteem, right? It's not as dramatic as self-hatred or something, which is obviously a low view of ourselves, but it's a kind of sneaky, because attachment feels good, but it's a kind of sneaky form of undermining our own sense of having within us a source of satisfaction that doesn't depend upon what other people say or what other people do or the decisions other people make or what happens. And we need to, without finding that source of inner satisfaction, we'll never really be happy. We'll always be craving something else, something else, something else. So that's another antidote for attachment, is just to see how it leads us into craving. And then that leads us into dissatisfaction again and again and again. So, attachment can never really lead us to ultimate satisfaction. It just leads us into more and more craving. But that's not to say that other relationships with other people can't help us grow and be a better person. They do, and they can. We need we need good friendships with good people, right? That's invaluable, right? So the real difficulty is finding that balance between, having a good, wholesome, close friendships with people and not being attached, right? Using those relationships to grow genuine love, right? This is something I talked about in one of the earlier sessions, the difference between love and attachment, but genuine concern for another person, right? Like we talk about, we need to cherish all sentient beings, like I just was. We need to, think more about others and ourselves, but we also need to do that in practice with real people, and not just with the abstract idea of all sentient beings, with one sentient being, right? That's when it becomes difficult, and that's when it becomes meaningful, really is. So yeah, so we do need to have close, intimate relationships with people, whether it be our parents or our children, our siblings, a partner, whatever. But we need to learn how to reduce attachment and increase genuine, just altruistic concern in those relationships.
Thank you, Venerable.
Okay, you're welcome. Oh, Aman, did you have a question?
Yes, Venerable, it was actually like a part of it. You actually answered it right now. But I was thinking, so I was evaluating my whole life. There's not been one person, starting from my parents to my close friends to my girlfriend, ex-girlfriend, to whoever, who have been really close to, who have not disappointed or who've not been disappointed by me. Meeting new people and loving them seems to be the easier part. Like cherishing them seems to, or like loving them or hanging out with them seems easy. But the more you get to know someone, the more you see their faults as well, and the more you get disappointed by their selfishness, and they get disappointed by yours.
Yeah,
Even
they come to see your faults too.
yeah, same. And I feel like it's like, is it escapism to just live alone and maintain distance from them and just love them from a distance, like respect them but not get too close to them?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. Part of me wants to say yes. I think it is a bit of escapism. But then, part of me is thinking about, what about all these Buddhist saints? Like, were they close to people? I don't know. There's definitely something to be said for emotional, what is it? This Venerable Dundrup in Australia, he said this, emotional independence. We do need to have a degree of emotional independence. But I think there's a danger of, if that becomes extreme, it can become like aloofness, emotional disconnectedness from people, which is not healthy, right? I don't know. I think it's helpful to think about, well, sometimes it's helpful to think about different teachers. Like, like think about Lama Yeshe. I mean, I never met him in person, but you read stories about Lama Yeshe, a lot of stories. And obviously he's a person who's intimately, emotionally connected to all the students, right? He's not aloof, not distant, not emotionally distant, very, emotionally connected, and maybe mature in a way that he can, connect with people on a very deep level very quickly. And in a way, and benefit them very greatly that way. And I think His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, is kind of like that. I mean, he has a very different, position in society, but he's it quickly generates a very intimate rapport with people. People feel that. So that, yeah. But then you think about, like, sure. I mean, I don't know. You can imagine, I can't think of a concrete example, but you can imagine someone, spending a lot of time doing retreat on their own and then just seeming kind of quite distant from people. I don't know. What's your question again, Aman?
So my question was, so Venerable, this attitude of like the more close I get to people and it's fun and it's amazing, but inevitably it results in disappointment for both parties. And the solution for that seems to be that there needs to be a healthy amount of respect as well, which comes with distance. That has been my solution.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, inevitably there is disappointment, but that doesn't have to be the defining factor and just of the whole relationship. I think. I mean, we're all disappointed by, we're disappointed by ourselves, inevitably at some point. Not to mention other people, right? But that doesn't mean we totally give up on ourselves and just, think, okay, I mean, people do. I mean, that's like really deep depression, right? Maybe suicide is when people really give up on themselves. I mean, so, but generally, we don't. So we recognize that we make mistakes, and then we love ourselves and carry on, right, and try to be better. So I think that's what we have to do with other people. Yeah, I don't know. I was just talking about. I have seen. I've friends. I've seen some people go into like long-term solitary retreat where they're really isolated from other people. And I think for a lot of people, it's like, it looks kind of like there's a danger that you stop growing in the way you relate to other people. I think there's a real danger of that you don't really, if you don't have that challenge of needing to meet other people where they're at again and again, that you just, that's something that we need, that challenge, like from other people, to keep growing as a person. Now, does that mean we need to be around other people like day in, day out? No, it's definitely good to do retreat. I mean, solitary retreat, sometimes be separated from other people for months, maybe years. But I think there's a danger if we just go year after year after year, not meeting other people, that we don't see the shortcomings we have, because we don't have anyone to be the mirror that held up to us and show us that. We don't have any triggers, right, to set off those negative emotions. It's easy to think about it. I mean, I always see in relation to my parents, like it's easy to go away and not meet them for a long time and think, oh yeah, now those things that annoyed me about them, I'm over that now. That doesn't affect me anymore. But just go home again and be with them for a few weeks, and then you see, nope, that's still there. I didn't do anything about that yet. Seemed like it, but so that way we need other people, right? Yeah, to help us grow. So I don't know, dealing with other people. So in conclusion, maybe I'll just conclude. Remember, so yeah, so basically I've pointed out a few different perspectives we can try to generate when we relate to other people that help us deal with other people, I think, in a more constructive way, a more healthy way. Yeah, by creating a sort of different perspective, different worldview. So the one is, in the context that we have infinite past and future lives, we're always going to meet everybody again and again and again. So we shouldn't give up, trying to, deal with, means have a wholesome relationship with everybody, eventually. That doesn't mean right now, but, we need to have that as an aspiration, that I aspire that eventually I can, have a good relationship with everybody in some life. I mean, in the future, or some future when I'm enlightened, right? So that one, yeah, we're never going to be separated from anybody. It's never that easy. Two, everybody, we and everybody else, has the potential for full enlightenment. So we need to remember that. Three, all of our happiness comes about independence upon others, right? And then four, our own growth, our own spiritual development completely depends upon relating to others, right? Other people. So I guess five, maybe in the conclusion, is our main practice really needs to be like learning to deal with other people better. right? And we use all of the different, the whole plethora of tools in the Buddhist toolbox for our mind to learn to do that, right? And that's probably, it's probably the most important thing. So I like it. I like that, Aman, you put this as the last topic for this series of 7, because it's like everything we've talked about, before in the previous 6 sessions is all about learning to deal with other people. And that's what, when we get up from the cushion, or when we, step out of this series of 7 sessions in our regular life, that's what we need to be working on. It's like learning how to deal with people better and better and better, until, eventually we're like His Holiness Dalai Lama, that just wherever we go, we know exactly what to say and what to do so that we can benefit anyone we come into contact with. Okay, so maybe we can dedicate on that note, by all the merit we've generated in this session and other sessions, we can rejoice. So by this merit, may all of His Holiness Dalai Lama, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, and all of our other spiritual teachers and all holy beings have long and stable lives and continue to guide us and all sentient beings until samsara ends. May the Buddha's teachings and all authentic spiritual traditions, which are beneficial to sentient beings, flourish and thrive for a long time. May we never be parted from these teachings. And may we ourselves quickly become enlightened and lead all other sentient beings to full enlightenment. And then may those who've taken rebirth in the lower realms quickly be freed from that, those rebirths, freed from that karma, and take perfect human rebirth in Pure Land. And may all sentient beings be free from fear of harm and abuse, and be free from hunger and thirst and loneliness, and have every kind of physical and mental nourishment, emotional nourishment, every form of well-being. And especially may, on this planet Earth, may we be able, humans be able to reverse climate destruction, and be able to stop completely destroying our environment, and rather learn to be good stewards of our environment and create conditions where Dharma can flourish. And all sentient beings can progress towards well-being and enlightenment. And then maybe bring to mind any other personal prayers, aspirations, dedications you have. So may all of those your prayers be fulfilled in accordance with your wishes. And then especially may Choe Khor Sum Ling, the host of these sessions, have all the conditions, volunteers and financial support and so forth, to be able to continue developing and growing and offering more and more programs to sentient, to people in Bangalore and beyond for many years to come. Yeah, I think that's all.